Before we dive in, here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
Do you like movies?
Do you like sports?
I've never played that sport on the screen, but I really enjoyed how the movie made me feel.
Well then, have we got a show for you. The Adrian Moment is where my friend Ocean and I discuss the triangulation of sports, movies, and life.
We dive deep into the movies, discussing how they relate to and have affected our lives.
We will talk about why the sport matters to the movie, why you don't have to love the sport to enjoy the movie, and mine a few nuggets of meaning inside the story you may not have realized was really there.
After listening to our show, come join us for more conversations about the movies that portray the thrill of victory
and the agony of defeat.
Find the Adrian Moment podcast on your favorite podcast app and join us while we cover the sports you love and the ones you never think about.
You will never see sports or sport movies the same again.
Hey, psst. Hey, you see that Snickers over there? If no one's looking, you should just take it.
No! Don't listen to him, my son. That would be stealing, and stealing is a sin.
Sin Schmin, it's a friggin' Snickers bar. You deserve to have it. Sinning really satisfies you.
Repent, my child. Virtue is the only real snack worth savoring. For that candy bar is merely a gateway to nougat damnation. Has this ever happened to you?
Listening to the devil on one shoulder and an angel on the other, and you're not sure what to think?
Then we're here to help. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Tommy Metz III, and this season on All the Feelings, we're examining the 7 deadly sins.
You know, the fun ones.
And the 7 heavenly virtues.
Which are also a thing. Through personal stories, historical oddities, and way too much embarrassment, we take you on a thrilling journey through all the goods and the bads you hear about in church.
But without all that pesky church stuff. So come join us for All the Feelings Season 9, a sometimes funny podcast about being human. All the sins, all the virtues.
All in one place. Go to allthefeelings.fun to learn more, or subscribe to All the Feelings wherever you get your podcasts.
Game over.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Star Wars Generations Podcast. Today we are once again talking about the Clone Wars, and we are once again using that title to not talk about the Clone Wars TV show. Because not only is there a Clone Wars 2D miniseries, microseries, thank you, there's also the Clone Wars movie, which I remember because it came out in theaters and it was widely panned as being just like for real little kids. And a lot of us who hadn't really loved the prequels anyway were really kind of turned off on it. And I didn't watch it for a long time. I then watched it. I really didn't like it. And honestly, that's probably a big part of why a lot of us, I think of my generation, never watched the Clone Wars TV show for so long because we associated it with this movie. But I've gone back and watched the movie and found there's actually some really interesting stuff in it to talk about. And I think a lot of reasons why, depending on when you watch it, you might really love it. So I'm excited to talk about it with you guys. It's 90 minutes. For those of you who haven't seen it, it is available on Disney Plus, but also we're going to give kind of a quick plot summary because there isn't that much to the plot. It's mostly about introducing some new characters, introducing some new dynamics, and setting up what will become the Clone Wars TV show. Erin, let's start with you because you kind of put your hand up. I think you were just like the right age when this movie came out, right?
I was the perfect age, bitch. I think, because when did this come out? I think I was 7.
I think it came out in like 94. No.
This movie came out in like
okay?
05.
Are you okay? I know I
08.
associated
Okay,
with the
guys.
end of my schooling. I was thinking from it's the end of my high school. No, it's right after the end of my
08. I would have
college,
been.
too.
I was 11 when it came out. I was pretty good age for it too.
I was the ripe age
Okay.
of 6.
Nice. So yeah,
Okay,
tell me about.
baby.
Did you guys see this in theaters? Did you watch it with your parents later?
Okay, so for me, it's a very vivid memory, of course. But it was my brother's birthday, and if I was 6, that would make him 11. He was turning 11.
Okay.
And he had a bunch of friends over, for a sleepover, and we were playing like Nerf guns and shit. And I was like very much a tomboy growing up, very much a tomboy. And I remember it's like we were gonna watch Star Wars, and I was so fucking excited, but I was trying to like downplay it, be like, no, I'm not. And then when the credits started rolling, I was like, Like, I just remember being so excited, and I loved every second of it, honestly. Like, first of all, the visuals of Christophsis, really fun. Like, almost like a
Mhm.
glass-covered planet with just these tall glass buildings. Really cool. And then there was Ahsoka, and I was like, "It's me. It's the
Mhm.
annoying little sister. Oh my god, I feel seen." Yeah, and I just remember loving it so much that I couldn't remember Ahsoka's name because I was a child and stupid. Um, so every night when I was like laying in bed trying to make up fun little stories about Star Wars characters in my head to fall asleep because I had insomnia, I'd go sneak into my brother's room next door and I'd be like, "Psst, psst, what's that character's name again?"
Oh my god.
And he would be like, "I swear to fuck, Aaron, you've asked me 3 times tonight." And I'm like, "Yeah,
Mhm.
but what is it?" And so we would barter, and it was just I had to give up a lot of playing time as a blind quarterback that he practiced tackling. Um, but then I got to know her name every night. It was great.
Sister, why don't you just write it down?
'Cause I was 6.
They learn
Man,
them real slow out in the country,
I was going
so
to say you couldn't write the word Ahsoka.
But it's remembering how it's you know what? Fuck off. I was homeschooled.
look, that is a great little story of an abusive older brother. That's, really fun. I like
Easy
it.
way to take that.
I'm kidding, I'm kidding.
No, I know.
I'm gonna cut all this
It
out.
was pretty shady of him, I will be honest.
I'm just saying, like, the practicing tackling someone who's, like, half your size. Anyway, not that I didn't do things
That's
like
why
that
Erin
to
is the
my own
lovely way
sibling,
she
but
is.
anyway, getting us back on track. Alex, what about you? Do you have a slightly less disturbing story about your early memories of this movie?
I don't have like a flashbulb memory. I actually don't remember, if I'm being so honest, if I saw the movie before I started watching the show because they came out pretty close together, right? Um,
Yeah, I think the movie was out, and then, like,
the
it
show
it,
came out a few
like,
months later.
kickstarted the show. I think the movie came out in the spring, and the show came out in the fall, something like that.
Yeah. So I don't remember. I don't think I saw it in theaters. I think that like because I was 11, so my parents started taking me to the movies, and I don't think either of them had any interest in seeing an animated Star Wars anything.
Mhm.
Um, but what I do remember from growing up is when I did watch it. I think I just kind of remember it as just being one. Like the Clone Wars was just a face that covered the movie, the show, everything was all just one thing. But the two things that stuck out in my brain from this was one, or I guess three things, I guess, would be one, of course, Ahsoka's appearance.
Mhm.
Two, to this day, um, little stinky Rada the Hut,
Stinky!
my boy. I think that I still to this day want him brought into the live action universe because I think it'd be so fun to see little baby Hut in live action.
I agree.
And I thought it was so ridiculously silly that this movie centered around the rescue of a little baby Hut. Um, and then the third thing I always thought was really funny, for me at least, was I don't know why, but when Obi-Wan fakes surrendering and then like sits down with the general, whose name is apparently Worm Loathsome,
Obviously.
which is incredible.
Yep.
And just like trolls him. Like that was my first introduction, I feel like, to just pure Obi-Wan trolling, where like I realized what he was doing. It really set the tone, I feel like, for the rest of the Clone Wars show.
That's
So
fair. That's fair. Yeah, the sass is strong with Obi-Wan in this particular
yeah.
moment
Oh,
where
it's
he's like,
so
"Oh, but wait,
good.
what about, subsection 7.2, and we have to talk about this for the negotiations of surrendering."
He's on a battlefield like, "My throat's a little dry. Do you have any tea?"
Let me give a quick summary of the plot of the movie, just because we're going to be referring to it. Um, this all takes place immediately afterward. This all takes place soon after the Battle of Geonosis. So we're in the time period between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, but basically right after Attack of the Clones. And we are primarily focused on Obi-Wan and Anakin. And I'd say the movie kind of has three main parts. One is that, like, when the movie starts, Obi-Wan and Anakin are involved in this big battle on Christophsis, and we see a lot of that battle where uh, we learn a lot about kind of Anakin and Obi-Wan and their various fighting forms. We learn that Anakin has been assigned specifically by Vader a Padawan of his own, which is interesting because he was a Padawan just like very recently.
Yoda. You said Vader.
Oh yeah, no. Okay, never mind. Um,
Good catch.
oh yeah, Yoda assigns Ahsoka, and we all know Ahsoka. This is her in her like earliest form, as a young teenager assigned to Anakin. And so during this period, we have mostly this battle where there's twists and turns, and there's a whole battle over a shield, and a lot of Anakin kind of going off script, and Ahsoka being like, "Wait, but should we be doing this?" and kind of setting the tone of their relationship for a while. And meanwhile, in the background, we're finding out that the Jedi are accepting that they need to work with people like Jabba the Hutt in order to win this war, and that people like Jabba the Hutt are also being victimized by this war, and that like his son was kidnapped. The little Stinky that you guys were talking about is this little baby Hutt, and so the whole point is to get Anakin and Obi-Wan off this planet so that we can send them to go try and rescue this baby. We then enter into part 2 of the movie, which is mostly the attempt to rescue the baby. And then that takes us to part 3 of the movie, which is where it's revealed that a different Hutt, Zero the Hutt, had actually worked with the Separatists to engineer this kidnapping plot, primarily because they're trying to frame the Jedi and make Jabba the Hutt think that it was the Jedi who did this and that the Jedi hate the Hutts, etc., so that Jabba will come into the war on the side of the Separatists. And of course, by the end, our heroes have won the day, and our heroes prove to Jabba that they actually have saved the baby, and they never wanted to harm the baby, and the Separatists and Zero were the ones doing it all. And we get to see Jabba as like, oh, little loving father, but also he's now going to utterly torture Zero the Hutt. And we end with Palpatine, Darth Sidious talking to Dooku, Darth Tyrannus, and saying like, yes, they won this little battle, but don't worry, we're going to win the war. There's obviously a lot of like twists and turns in the plot, but in terms of like the main overview, did I miss anything big?
I don't think so. It's pretty much the gist of it. You kind of get introduced to all the, the main players in the Clone Wars overall.
Mm-hmm. So I actually really, starting off, I found I really liked this whole plot line of Jabba. And you're right, the whole like kidnapping a baby and like, oh, isn't the baby so cute? That's kind of eye rolly, but probably great for 6-year-olds and 10-year-olds and 50-year-olds who are also 10-year-olds, whatever it is. But I kept thinking about the historical parallels of this because, like, the idea of like a government having to work with a criminal organization, like this happens in war all the time. In World War II, in the Allied invasion of Italy, we had to actually work really closely with the mafia, the main crime syndicate, in order to like get passage to the places our troops needed to go and stuff like that. Very much like they're doing with the Hutts. And it's not really talked about much, but I like this as kind of a way of introducing the idea of the Jedi are already having to compromise their values a little bit. Like at first, Mace doesn't want anything to do with the Hutts, and neither does Anakin. And this isn't the kind of thing that the Jedi would normally do. This is kind of a compromise. And I just really like that as kind of setting up what is, I think, one of the main themes of the Clone Wars TV show going forward.
Yeah, it kind of establishes, clearly all of it being Palpatine's plan. I think Palpatine did that on purpose, specifically to like start, like just kind of like erode some of the Jedi's beliefs and what they hold important and valuable, and this was like an easier sell to like oh, it's a child, you can abandon your vows, work with the Hutts to save an innocent life form, even though like they are a crime syndicate that commit atrocities and slavery and all those things. Like it was just a very it was a smart way, I think, for Palpatine to kind of start the eroding process, or continue the eroding process, I guess. But yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting too. I think it's just like watching as an adult, the storyline is very rudimentary, I think. Just like, oh, it's a double cross trap. Who could have seen that coming? As a kid, you're like, what? No way. That's crazy.
My mind was blown.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But Dooku knew that Rota wasn't dead and he lied about it? But what could this be for? Like,
characters can't lie. That's
I
not
can
a thing
picture
that
Erin
happens.
speaking like that as a child to her brother.
Mm-hmm.
And her brother's being like, shut the fuck up. Also, do you guys think, when I watched it this time around, do y'all think Obi-Wan was in on? I think he orchestrated Anakin getting a Padawan. I think he orchestrated
for sure
Ahsoka becoming like Anakin's Padawan. I don't actually even think it was Yoda's idea. My headcanon is Obi-Wan went to Yoda and was like, yo, I got a scheme. I have a plot afoot.
I need
Can we
some
please
revenge.
make this happen?" Right? Exactly. I need to get back at this little fucker for all the years he tortured me. I really see it as like Obi-Wan was in on this and maybe even orchestrated like Ahsoka like showing up. 'Cause that just doesn't happen. There's not like, how do you have such a massive error there when Anakin doesn't put it in unless Yoda was being sneaky himself, which is totally possible. To
Right.
me, Obi-Wan just seemed very coy about it the whole time.
So I'm kind of two minds of this, and I'm trying hard not to like. I feel like a lot of the later stuff that's been added to canon has gone back and tried to explain this, and so I'm not. There's kind of like the how do you feel about it just in this movie versus what we now know later, and like Anakin was a Padawan, I believe, for most of the movie of Attack of the Clones. He's been a. Go ahead.
I have to go. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Sorry.
You're right, Matthew.
And so like for me, like and if I remember, Obi-Wan is kind of a little hesitant still about him. Like he's very worried about him during Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
I do think that there is a lot of justification given later about how because of the war, because of how many Jedi died at Geonosis, which we don't really see, like we see a lot of bodies, but we don't really think about. But later books have talked about how that was just an utter slaughter, and that all of a sudden all these Padawans need to be graduated or sent out into the field.
Mm.
And so I can totally see the idea that Yoda, and maybe like Obi-Wan had been like, yeah, I don't know, like Anakin needs something, and Yoda was like, he needs a Padawan he does need. But to me, Obi-Wan would be the one fighting against it. Like I think you're right. Obi-Wan is getting a kind of like shoes on the other foot now, isn't it? But to me, Obi-Wan, because I do think that one of the things it establishes is that Anakin wasn't really ready for Ahsoka, and that's a big part of what starts to cause problems for him already, even in this movie. And to me, I'm so invested in Obi-Wan, the person trying to be the right mentor and not really knowing how. I think you're right. He kind of comes to the idea, and maybe he really was his idea. But I think I like the idea more that Yoda had to talk him into it.
So you see it more as Obi-Wan was just enjoying the mix-up and the fallout, and was just kind of going along with it as it happened.
Yeah. That he's like,
I
all right,
think
well,
it's a fair interpretation.
yeah. But I think you're right. I think the text can easily support either one. It could definitely be that either he said to Yoda, "Hey, can we make this happen?" or that he was like, Yoda, I don't know. I think Anakin needs a leadership project of his own. I wonder what that could be. And
Yeah, I mean, I think either way, Obi-Wan was very amused by the situation.
oh yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I don't know. And I think that like very much, I mean, honestly, no matter whose idea it was, Obi-Wan or Yoda's, like I think it was honestly the right call. Like, Anakin might not have been ready per se, but like if it wasn't for, obviously the meddling of Palpatine down the line, like Ahsoka was a major anchor for Anakin during the Clone Wars. Like she reeled him back from doing a lot of dark things, kind of grounded him. Padme grounded him obviously as his wife, but Ahsoka grounding him as a student, I think, was really important. And then the loss of Ahsoka, because of that whole plot later in the show, became a really critical moment, at least in, I think, his distrust of the Jedi and fall to the dark side. So,
right.
And Yoda even says it, which I thought I forgot he said that in this movie. Like, I think one of the best lines was, Obi-Wan says, do you think he's ready or whatever? And Yoda says something along the lines of, ready to take on a Padawan, young Skywalker is ready to lose her or let go of her. He is not. And like, that's something he needs to learn. And I was like, damn, I didn't realize that Yoda spat that knowledge in this movie. Like, it's a great line.
It is, but then it's the kind of idea of like, okay, we're going to hand this other person a stick of dynamite.
Ah, yes.
Because they need to learn to let it go before it explodes, which makes a lot of sense as long as you can guarantee that they will let it go when it explodes. And Erin is back. So actually, I'm going to pause for a second. And Erin had to step away for a second, but Erin, I want to bring you into this conversation as well.
I'm ready.
We're talking about like, was the decision to give Anakin a Padawan in the end a good idea? And Alex is definitely on the side that it is, and I'm on the side of that, like, because to me, giving Anakin the chance to be a leader in his own right kind of pulls him away from all the people who are trying to teach him things and allows him more into this place of like, maybe I know right and I can teach Ahsoka what's right, which I think leads directly to him being more and more willing to challenge the rest of the Jedi, because he's got now his this own accountability of someone who's like, okay, yeah, no, I'm learning from you, Master, even though she sometimes questions him, but it pulls him away from like being right under Obi-Wan's care.
And I had mentioned, Aaron, just that like Yoda had dropped that like banger line of like, ready for a Padawan, young Skywalker is ready to let go of one. He is not, and like that's something he needs to learn.
That
So I
was
was saying,
fire.
yeah, and then Matthew brought up the point of like, it's like handing someone a stick of dynamite to try and teach them to drop it before, to learn so it won't explode. But like, was that the right call to like put him in a position like that? So just now you have all the information. Please give us your thoughts.
Okay. Thanks for the info download, guys. I mean, like, obviously, I want him to have a Padawan because that's Ahsoka. That's my girl. But like, was it the right move for him? I feel like the war politics plays into it because it's like, would Ahsoka have been made a Padawan from a youngling if it weren't for the war? Probably not. Like, yeah, she's gifted, but she's really young. And then would they have given Anakin someone to like, keep an eye on him, low-key, but also like just a little extra help? Probably not. I do think Ahsoka holds him back in a lot of important ways at a lot of critical times in the series, but we're talking about the movie.
Right.
Guys, you just gave me such a loaded question. I'm just like, I don't know what to say. I feel like I don't know what to say. As coming from Yoda, yes, I think it was the right decision. I understand Yoda's thought process. Coming from Obi-Wan, someone who actually knows him and just how like volatile he can be, I can see how it was a good idea or was like a good thought. But I don't think I don't know. I think Obi-Wan wanted to try and teach him something by making him teach because teaching someone how to teach is a good way for them to learn.
Right.
But I think kind of like you mentioned, Matthew, that kind of like gave him this power or like superiority that it's like maybe he doesn't really deserve.
Yeah. And I think you're right, especially the point about the war that like everything's advanced, that she's probably not old enough to become a Padawan under normal circumstances. He's been out of being a Padawan for like 3 weeks at this point, maybe like 3 days.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting, but it is like going back and seeing it. I think originally I was just so in the like, oh my God, we're about Stinky. This is so boring. And now I'm definitely able to see like, no, this was like setting up and foreshadowing a lot of great stuff.
Mhm.
And I want to highlight just one moment of that. There's one moment where and I forget the exact circumstance, but basically he I think while he's leading his troops, and this is one of the first time we've seen him as a general, and he kind of leads a lot of his troops into a situation where a lot of them get killed.
Mhm.
And we see him like there's one point where I think it's Rex or one of the clones asks him like, "What's your plan?" And he says, "Just follow me."
Mhm.
And like that's not a plan. That's not a really
Not how you
good
lead
plan.
people.
And then as he starts this attack where he kills a bunch of droids, we hear just a few moments of the dark side theme. And I was just like, "Oh, we're starting early with some of this." I'd forgotten about
I
that, so
didn't
I
catch
really like that.
that.
Yeah. I may be forgetting the exact moment when it happens. But it was definitely during something where Anakin's doing something a little like, this seems good, but maybe not.
Yeah.
And then you hear that music and it's like, "Ooh, this is ominous."
Ooh, I'll have to look that up later. Yeah, I was a little distracted watching this stuff. As you guys know, I'm in nursing school and there's just like a lot going on right now.
That's fair.
So I definitely
fair.
like watch while I do other things these days.
Mhm.
I don't know if I watch anything without also being on my phone or doing other things.
Yeah, ADHD world. It's a thing.
So
is.
real. So real.
So we talked a lot about Ahsoka, and we haven't yet talked about her counterpart, who was introduced during the micro series, but haven't really, that was not seen by a lot of people. This movie is also in this world the first time we get Asajj Ventress. Erin, you're making some happy little faces and noises.
Oh
How
my
do you
God,
feel
yeah.
about Asajj?
I was trying to describe the other day to my boyfriend just how fucking hot she is, but we were watching the
Oh
micro
my God.
series and I was like, this isn't it, okay? Like, don't look at her. Don't look at her. She's beautiful, I promise. And then I saw her in this movie and I was like, that's what the fuck I'm talking about. Like, she is such a baddie and her fighting style is like uncontrolled, yes, but it's so like visceral. It's just like makes for a very interesting character. Like definitely someone I was drawn to when I was younger. I was like, ooh, who
Mm-hmm.
is she? She's hot and she's fierce. I don't really care that she's doing bad stuff.
First, I just want to say you got your boyfriend of only, I think, a couple of weeks to watch the micro series with you, and is still with you. You have major riz. Like that's
Yeah.
an accomplishment.
Not
I'm
only Matthew,
him.
can we point out? Not only did she get him to watch the micro series, then proceeded to go on a rant on how sexy Asajj Ventress is, and he was just like, "Yep, great,
No, I know.
yes,
It's the best. He's great.
you have this man trapped."
Love it, love it. But yeah, like I really love this introduction to Asajj, especially because I love Asajj as a character. I think she does great things throughout the show. But early in the show, they lean really hard into her not just being sexy, but her being this like total femme fatale.
Mhm.
And there's that moment in, I think it's the first episode that she's introduced in, the first episode arc in the show, where she like stabs a guy with a lightsaber
Oh
and then
yeah,
pulls him closer to her on the lightsaber to kiss him. And like
Yes,
I'm
that
sure
happens.
what'd you say?
I say yes, that happens. It's much later in the series though. I think
Is
it's
it?
during the
Okay. Well,
attack on Camino.
okay, you're probably right, but I remember there being some other kind of very over the. I mean, certainly that moment I think unlocked a lot of things for a lot of people that they figured out much later in life and were not had a lot of things to think about. But like it just I love her, but I feel like sometimes I think I remember there was a similar thing with her first episode. Maybe I'm totally wrong, but where again it was this very like over the top femme fatale. And
she
in
did it.
this,
She
like,
she
she
did it
is very
again.
hot, she is very powerful, but it doesn't feel like they're like, "Hey, look, she," like, the show isn't trying to put a big glowing light on her being like, "Hey, look, she's sexy. This is how all men are supposed to feel about her." They're just like, "No, she's powerful and she's beautiful, and here she is."
Mhm.
Yeah, she
I
also does it with. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Aaron. Oh,
I was just gonna say that I looked it up, and the one that we're all thinking about, like the one that's commonly referred to, there might be something earlier in the series. I'm not remembering Matthew.
Mhm.
But the one we're all thinking about is from the episode Arc Troopers, which is season 3, episode 2.
Okay. So, yeah, it's further in than I'm thinking.
but there was also the one where they're rescuing Newt Gunray, and she stabs him through the chest and kisses him on the cheek, and then throws him off. The captain of the guards after they
Yes,
rescue Newt
that's
There it
Gunray
is. Yep.
okay.
in the back, and then she kisses him on the cheek and throws him off. That was in season 1.
Yeah.
So that's
Okay,
what
so
I
there
think.
was
Yeah.
something like
So,
that.
but it does happen, and I mean, in this, and also in this movie, we see the beginning of which I think is a very underrated part of the entire Clone Wars show, but the sexually charged banter between Obi-Wan and Ventress. Like,
Yes.
no, like my man's in love with Duchess Satine.
Mhm.
He claims to be this just straight up normal Jedi, but every time he he battles Ventress, they're like flirting with each other.
You're just like eye fucking the entire
Yeah,
time.
literally though, they're literally eye fucking each other, and it's like, oh my dear Kenobi, oh my like they're literally flirting and like basically like fucking like try. It's very, it's like hot in this crazy way. Like I don't even know. Like
Well, and I
Alex
love
is
that
one
the
of those people who had something awakened inside of him. I'll tell you that right now.
I mean, that's fine.
was it Ventress or was it Obi-Wan? No,
I mean, both. Like, you can
Yeah,
want mommy
fair.
and want daddy. Like, that's a thing. But
Fair.
like, to me, part of what I
Imagine trying to turn the podcast around. Imagine like,
I'm just saying. Look, also remember, I was under general anesthesia yesterday, so I am liable for nothing today.
I
But
appreciate
that's
that.
not how that works, is it?
Obviously.
general anesthesia screws you up. Like,
It stays in your system.
No, it does. It does.
it didn't for me, but I'm gonna use it as an excuse. But anyway, the point being, what I love about that also is that like there's sometimes where you're like, I feel like they're flirting, but like, are they really? Are the writers ever going to acknowledge this? And then, of course, later in the book Lost Jedi, which is one of the best books that I think there's out there, and that we did an episode about. At one point, Obi-Wan is talking to this other person, Quinlan Voss, who has to go after Ventress about how to interact with her. And no, I'm sorry, wait, that's not. No, it's not Duke
Dark
of Jedi Lost.
Disciple.
It's Dark Disciple. Yeah, let me start that again. But in the book Dark Disciple, which we've talked about, a great Star Wars book, this is fully paid off when Obi-Wan is telling Quinlan Voss about how to kind of get in Asajj's good graces, and he's describing the way he would talk to her. And Quinlan's like, wait, you would flirt with her while fighting? And he's like, it's banter. It's what you do. But like, I just so appreciated that, like, that dynamic that we all saw was named, like, it was like a lampshade was put right on it. And I just like that.
Also, I feel like we could talk about Ahsoka a little bit more. I feel like we
Sure.
could. I just want to bring up her disposition with Anakin just being so silly. Like, just like immediately from the bat, like contradicting everything he says. And Anakin's like, who is this kid? What the hell? But it's like, Anakin, that's literally what you were like as a Padawan and still kind of are. And he's just like kind of shook at first that like someone is doing it to him. But then he's kind of like, all right, wait a minute. I like this kid.
He's like, I've
I
played
like
these
her.
games.
Like, you know how to play the game. I know how to play the game. We can play the game together. Now I have a teammate in the game. And I appreciate that, like, even though it's only a short movie, like, you know, the change of heart he has.
I mean,
you can
even
immediately tell that they're gonna be a good team. Sorry, Erin.
I was just gonna say, even after that first scene where they're sent off to destroy the energy field on Christophsis, and you know, Ahsoka kind of fucks up, but they get it done in the end, and she's kind of dejected, defeated, and Anakin says, like you never would have made it as Obi-Wan's Padawan, but you might make it as mine. And I was like,
Yeah.
It was so cute.
Yeah.
I was
That
like,
was
now
definitely nice.
hug, but they're Jedi, so.
Yeah. And it definitely sets up, I think, the brother-sister dynamic that the two have with each other. And like, I have trouble believing that the Jedi would be dumb enough to let this happen, because I do think, and I think season 7 of the Clone Wars really confirms this, that in the end, Yoda is right. Anakin is not able to let go of Ahsoka, and that's a part of what screws him up and pushes him in the direction that he winds up falling. But once you accept the conceit that they've done it, it does seem like they're really good for each other, and that like he's able to, you know, because I do think there's an extent to which she is a little bit too like locked into her ways, you know, and that she needs him kind of pushing her a little bit, and she takes to rebelling pretty quickly. Like, I was thinking as kind of a thought experiment, can you imagine if instead they'd given him Barriss Offee? Like, I think she would.
Don't even joke.
I think Barriss would just be narking on him like every single day.
Yes.
Like, you know, and he would have no tolerance for her. And the fact was that like both Anakin and Ahsoka were both kind of in that weird place that I think if Anakin has to have a Padawan, then I do think Ahsoka's the best choice.
Well, I mean, she comes into it like wildly confident for somebody in her position. Like, she strolls up to Rex and she's like, so if you're a captain, I'm a Jedi, I outrank you. And he's like, sit down, bitch. Experience outranks everything. Like, stop.
Which I forgot that was said in this movie, because in Rebels, when they're reunited after a long time, he says it back to her again.
You forgot.
And I always could tell like it was a reference back to like, but I was like, I watched the show over and over again, and I'm like, when does he ever say this to her? And it was in this movie, and that's what the callback was to.
I think about that all the time.
And I do think that they walked this moment back a little bit, because a lot of times, especially in early seasons of the Clone Wars TV show, you have her being very hesitant to command them and being like, Rex, you know, you have all this experience, I shouldn't command you. And him being like, yeah, but you're a Jedi. Like, you know how to do this. And him like, and I've never been in the military. I don't know that much about the military, but I've read a lot about the military. And I do know that like often you'll get like when an officer is straight out of officer school, like, and has their first assignment as an ensign or a lieutenant or whatever, they're often assigned a far more experienced sergeant. And like the sergeant is basically like in control, and everyone knows that. And the sergeant is helping the lieutenant and like covering up the lieutenant's mistakes. But theoretically and officially, the lieutenant is the one in charge. And that when the lieutenants come in and like, no, sergeant, I went to officer school, I know more than you, they often like, oh no, he got shot in the back during that fight, that's just so terrible.
Jesus.
But like when the lieutenant's like, okay, I know, sergeant, you tell me what I should do. And you know, the lieutenant will give a dumb order, and the sergeant will mean like, Lieutenant, didn't you mean to actually order this? Lieutenant's like, yes, I just misspoke. Of course, that's what I mean.
My bad.
And I do feel like
that's dog.
I feel like there's an awareness of that kind of relationship in what's set up with really Rex and Anakin, but especially Rex and Ahsoka. And so I kind of like the idea that originally she's like super confident, and Rex has to knock her down a few rungs, and then like he has to build her back up some.
I do want to also point out just like how early in the war this is, because for one, Rex is absolutely not used to somebody above him. He's trained only with clones. So like
Right.
I can understand like the clones in a lot of literature are very hesitant to follow the Jedi. They're very untrusting because it's like, aren't y'all supposed to be peacekeepers? What do you mean you're going to tell us how to fight a war? And
Right.
2, Rex is talking out his fucking ass about experience because once again, the war just started, bitch. Like you grew up in a
He has
tube.
He has had one major battle that Ahsoka wasn't in, but that's yeah, and presumably like I mean he's already kind of like what's his official rank? He's captain, right?
Captain.
So he has like clearly he has a lot of like experience in like the training sessions and stuff like that, and he's like higher ranked than other clones. He's probably one of the older clones. But yeah, no, he hasn't been fighting numerous wars. There haven't been numerous wars.
Yeah.
No one knew about this clone army until, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, literally.
I love that fact is often just kind of skipped over.
Yeah.
But yeah, and
Yeah, that's just
sorry, go
great.
ahead.
No, sorry, it's one of my least favorite things about all of it. It's one of the reasons I think I most dislike the prequels is that it feels like such a huge glaring thing of like why in the world would you be like, "Oh, I didn't know we had this army?" Anyway,
A secret
I've given that
army?
rant before,
Sweet.
but yeah. Go on.
There could be nothing wrong with this. A free secret army? Let's go.
Hey, Free Secret Army, elite.
Elite.
All I was gonna say was just like, I don't know. I feel like I want to talk about the actual plot here for a minute because I think that after the Battle of Christophsis, it really just goes off the rails a little bit with the Huttling thing.
Oh yeah.
Like the actual battle, I thought was really fun and creative. Like felt very much like a Clone Wars episode. Like just the beginning felt like it could be a Clone Wars episode. Like
Yeah.
we're on a battle. Some tomfoolery goes down with Anakin and Ahsoka. Obi-Wan has to stall so they can get their dumb plan off. Very classic stuff. But then we have this Huttling that is kidnapped and then like purposely returned to the Jedi so they can like try and spin this around, and all of it is with the backing of this random other Hutt who like glows in the dark, and his name is Zero.
Because he fancy.
And I don't know, it's like a very like it wasn't like that compelling of a storyline, but the characters are quirky and zany enough between Zero and Rata and all that I feel like it's kind of fun. And we get a little Dooku Anakin lightsaber action, which is always enjoyable.
I just like how much this ties into the Clone Wars series because I think I don't remember if it's in season 1 or season 2, but there's an episode called The Hidden Enemy, where basically there's a traitor among the clones who's snitching to Ventress. And this episode happens like a day before the movie. And so like when you hear Ventress say something about like, oh, finally I'll get my revenge, or like I'm gonna get back at that fucker. I think it was about Obi-Wan she was saying this. That's because her and Obi-Wan and Anakin just fought in a library like yesterday.
Oh, good fight.
Good fight.
Good
Really
fight. Good
fight.
episode.
Yeah. So I always just love thinking of those, like that episode and the start of this movie as like a little pairing, like a little story arc.
I like that.
Yeah, I can see that. And I will say also that I think this movie, does a good job of helping to establish that these are going to be the versions of these characters, in part because there are some actors who carry over to this movie who don't stick around for the Clone Wars, but who at least are in this one. Christopher Lee is the actual voice of Dooku.
Ooh.
And I think it kind of helps establish like that when I'm looking, because in some ways I always felt that like,
wait,
Dooku,
really?
Yeah.
That's cool. I did not realize that.
Yeah, and Samuel Jackson is the voice of Mace Windu.
Nuh-uh.
That I did hear, but I thought it was crazy.
Yeah. I will
Nice.
say there's one like officer who appears for a little while, and then I think Jabba kills him, who I really thought was voiced by, or maybe it's another Huttling or something like that. I really thought it was voiced by Tom Hanks. I don't think it
That
was,
would be
but
fucking comedy.
there was someone who I could have sworn was Tom Hanks in this. But yeah, no, it's a pretty cool cast. But of course, then it also gives us like this is the first of Matt Lantner and Ashley Eckstein,
Good lord.
and James Arnold Taylor, and a bunch of those others. So yeah.
Yeah. All I could think of as a kid was how much I thought the little Huttling was weird and cute. And now I just try to picture, I don't know, like also like the animation, obviously at the very beginning of the show is kind of rough. So like the Huttling itself looks like a little turd kind of. It's just being carried around.
Stinky turd.
Yeah.
And Obi-Wan, they do him so dirty.
They do him so dirty. for no reason.
Yeah, I do really like the idea of establishing that the Jedi have to work with this criminal element, as well as establishing. Because one of the things they say at the beginning is that like a lot of innocents are being harmed by this war, in part because the Jedi don't have the Jedi are no longer like dealing with like crime. Now they're dealing with this war, and then it's like and then Jabba the Hutt has his son kidnapped. Like the son's innocent, but like Jabba the Hutt is not. So
Mhm.
that was like a weird connection. But I like this idea of like reminding us that the Jedi are not only not used to fighting a war, but now they're doing that. They can't do all the normal like peacekeeping and kind of space cop stuff that they normally do.
Mm-hmm.
But I wish that they had gone with like Crimson Dawn or like introduced the Pikes or something like that, because of all the beings in the world that I can understand being like, well, yeah, I'm this criminal mastermind, but also like I have a kid, I care about my kid. The Hutts are just not one of them. Like, and I'm sure, yeah, of course, like the Hutts would love their kids too, but it felt so weird and so out of character for Jabba without any build up to it. I just really wish they'd chosen some other criminal syndicate.
I can understand that. I mean, I think it kind of comes down to like, well, they wanted to bring Anakin back to Tatooine.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, for Jabba, especially what we see in like Revenge of Nope, Return of the Jedi. There we go.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't make a ton of sense. And it's interesting because we never see that side of him again. Like Rhoda is never, at least that I can remember, mentioned again in the series or anything.
No, I don't think so. Zero plays a part a couple times.
The
I
funky
do love my
uncle.
boy Zero.
And we're gonna talk about him and his wonderful girlfriend.
Ooh, who was featured in the micro series.
Yeah, she was. Yeah, she was.
Oh
Her
wait,
and
no,
her
she
lip.
wasn't. She was featured in something else that we're going to talk about later. Another vintage
Oh no.
cartoon series.
You are correct. You're correct. We might convince Alex even to stick around for that discussion of some
please.
classic Star Wars.
I cannot stick around for the discussion today, but I will listen to the episode and determine whether I want to actually go watch that show.
No, you won't.
You won't want to watch the show, trust me.
No, you I mean, you won't listen to our podcast. You never listen to our podcast.
I don't want to hear my own voice.
Yeah, but you don't listen to the episodes you miss.
This is true.
So, Erin, he also doesn't want to listen to our voices.
I love both of your
Basically,
voices.
Alex, I think you only want to listen to your own voice.
Wow, that really hit a new level that sounds like my
Just in
mother
his
talking
head.
to me when I was a child. that brought up some childhood trauma. Damn.
You're welcome. Clean your room.
Oh God, Naveen, I can hear her.
Eat your vegetables. But
Aaron's
all right.
dying over here.
How do we feel about some of the nicknames? Sky Guy and Snips.
Love it. I know you
I
fucking
forgot
hate
that
it.
the reason she snips is because she's like, "Don't be snippy with me."
And there it goes. That's now
Yeah,
her name forever.
Because I'd forgotten about this entirely when I watched the show, I kept is it like a reference to her like having snipped off her leku? Like what is going on here?
That would be crazy, Matthew.
I didn't know what leku were. I didn't know
Like
if
an
like
extremity. Okay, it's fine.
I mean, so are fingernails. Like
No.
you trim your fingernails.
I don't agree with that.
You have never trimmed your fingernails?
I don't think that my fingernails are an extremity.
But I didn't I did not have an encyclopedic knowledge of
No,
this
it's
stuff when
fine.
I was watching the show.
It's sorry. I'll let it go.
I'm having a great time right now. This is
You'll
what it
allow
feels
it.
like
Thank
with me and Aaron talk, I think.
This is great. This is great. Anyway, any other last things about this work of cinematic genius before we wrap up and go into some bonus content?
Let me think for 1 second. Hold on. Hutling, Anakin, lightsaber fight, Ahsoka. Oh, one more thing I do want to actually mention. I appreciate that they also kind of set the tone for how Padme is going to be acting.
Yeah.
Like, threw her right into the thick of things, like shows that she's really going to be like the same kind of badass we saw in episode 2. Because not that she wasn't like always badass, but they kind of toned it back a little bit in episode 3. They kind of took the spotlight off of her.
A little?
Okay, a lot. I was trying to be generous.
Yeah.
In episode 2, she's a lot more like, in the fight, in the moment. And like in this, I feel like this really sets the tone for the show with her, like, I'm not gonna take no for an answer. Like, fuck you. I'm gonna go rogue and do what I feel is right for the Republic. And I really appreciated that they did that, and that she was like the one who like pulled up on Zero and was like, nah. And like, Count Dooku shows up, screw you too, buddy.
And I will say, if you want to know more about her background and kind of how she becomes who she is and stuff like that, for our special member episode of the book club, this month we're doing the book Queen's Shadow, which I'm sure that both Alex and Erin have already read a significant part of. That's why they're both giving me terrified looks right now. But that's going to be for members only. And you, of course, can become a member for only $5 a month, $55 a year. You get great access to ad-free episodes. You get bonus content at the end of episodes, and you get full bonus episodes. So please think about doing that. And we will have some bonus content at the end of this where we talk about who else could or could not have been a good who else could or could not have been a good Padawan for our man Anakin. But Erin, do you have any last thoughts about this movie before we wrap it up?
Oh, I have so many thoughts. Oh. Sorry, my mom called me. Last thoughts. I just want to put it out there that today I rolled up with a very special haircut that you guys haven't mentioned at all, but I actually went specifically for the Captain Rex bleach, box bleach.
I'm gonna be so real. I
shaved
almost
ass,
said that as soon as you got
really
on the
short
call,
hair.
but I did not want to sound insulting. But I literally almost said to you, "You look like Captain Rex," but I did not
No,
want you
I
to get mad
do.
at me off
mean,
the rip.
You've had very short hair, and now you have short hair. Meanwhile, my hair is like 5 different kinds of bronze, a full, like, long hair, new color, and no one's noticed that either. So, like,
To be fair, no one mentioned anything when I grew a beard months ago.
And I liked it.
we both
Yeah,
said
that
we
was
liked it.
not on air though, and I wanted it on the public record.
I want to put it. I wasn't saying that just to be like, you guys should notice my haircut.
We
I
all
thought it's
hate
funny.
each
I
other.
grabbed the wrong guard yesterday when I shaved my head, and I shaved it way too short. So I was like, damn, I'm really giving Captain Rex for sure because this is skinhead level.
I accidentally gave myself a goatee once by doing that. So yeah, I feel your pain. And me having a goatee was, a friend of mine described it as, well, it's a choice.
Oof.
So
If I ever fucked up the shaving, I would just shave it all off and start over.
Yeah. All right. So now on to the bonus content. For everyone else, thank you all so much for listening. Live long and prosper.
Stay classy, Christophus.
In my experience, no. In my book, experience outranks everything.
Then I'd better go get some experience.